Now, let's go to my first guest, political and social commentator, James Melville. Good afternoon, James.
Good afternoon, Kevin. You well?
I'm very, very well. Now, let's talk about the Tory leadership race. I mean, it is all over, isn't it? I mean, Sunak is sunk. Liz can't lose. Why are the Tory party subjecting themselves to 5 more damaging weeks of internecine conflict, tearing chunks out of themselves, a very bad look to the nation, and probably more to the point, why are the Tories subjecting us, the nation, to this spectacle? We don't want 5 weeks of this. What we want is strong government. We want a Prime Minister in place now. This is hardly the time for us to not really have a Prime Minister and not really have a government, is it?
Yeah, completely. It's classic navel-gazing. I mean, these election contests should be wrapped up probably within a month, but there's certain rules and procedure that they adhere to. But it's actually self-defeating for the Tories because people are getting sick of it. Effectively, all these debates, it's a debate for party members. Our debates will come at the next general election, and that's when they'll really have to prove their worth. But based on what I've seen so far, it's a lesser of two evils, but which one is the lesser of two evils? I mean, from what I've seen so far, there are 2 different visions in terms of possibly the future, not just of the Tory party, but also the country, high tax or low tax. I mean, in terms of the 2 candidates, Truss I've always think is a bit of a lightweight, but she does come across as a little bit more human than Sunak. But, I mean, it's a zero-sum game choice, so much so it seems like a lot of the Tory members would actually prefer if Boris Johnson was still there.
That's for damn sure. That is for damn sure. You're so right.
Yeah, he's got an ability to win elections. I'm no fan of Boris Johnson, and there's whiffs of scandal all over the place, but he does win elections. These 2, they come across as machine politicians, a bit like the leader of the opposition as well. So the public are looking at this thinking, well, where is the real choice? Where is the charisma? Where is the long-term vision for the country? Where is the leader who looks like they're going to serve the country wholeheartedly rather than serving themselves? And at the moment, we've just got an elongated election contest that the people aren't engaging with. If you ask most people to really understand the policies and the individuals of the 2 people who are going to be the next Prime Minister, I suspect most people in the country wouldn't have a clue. Because they're not connecting. It's early days, but based on their track record in government, they're not suddenly going to change into this sort of fantastic, charismatic, ideological-driven politician. I don't think either of them have it in them.
There's no doubt that Liz is preaching a true blue message that is going down well with the Tory party members, low tax, small state, maybe loosening the tight grip of the green levies. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak is not preaching such a true blue message. Now, so confident is Liz Truss that she exercised her right not to be interviewed by Andrew Neil, which is something that a similarly confident Boris Johnson did before the last general election. The BBC and Andrew Neil shocked that he should deny the chance to be humiliated by their chief interrogator. Andrew Neil now, of course, has moved on to Channel 4. And Liz said no, but Sunak, possibly because he's desperate, said yes. And I don't think it was a good move. Let's remind ourselves of his grilling at the hands of Andrew Neil the other night on Channel 4.
As the global economy grinds to a halt, as monetary policy has been tightening, that it's the right thing to do to tighten fiscal policy as well?
I think it is absolutely the right thing to do to not put fuel on the fire of the inflation problem that we already have.
So there'll be a recession?
Well, actually, that's not the forecast of the majority of most independent forecasters here in the UK. And the way we're going to get growth in this economy is by doing the things that actually drive productivity up.
Here's Sunak.
So why, when you were young, did you say you had no working-class friends?
I mean, Andrew, we all say silly things when we're students, but I've talked about my background. My family, as you said, were welcomed here as migrants.
No, we know that. I feel I almost know them personally myself. I've heard so much about... so it was just wrong when you said that.
So Sunak looking a bit rattled. He fancies himself, James, as a real performer on the media stage, but Andrew Neil basically gave him a terrible time. I think it was a big mistake of him to step into the lion's den like that.
Yeah, completely. It was inevitable as well. And Neil's brilliant at this stuff. He's skewered politicians from all sides for years. But if you're going to do it, at least do your homework. At least come up with the right answers and at least try and fight back a bit. Any politician who does finish an interview with Andrew Neil in equal terms, they're going to get a lot of credit for it. But what's happening is the politicians are just lightweights. They're literally going to get grouted by these by the likes of Andrew Neil because they don't have enough about them in terms of their core ideology or their grasp of a lot of details on different subject matters, and they come across as lightweights. I mean, that whole thing just looked like some sort of apprentice grilling. It was terrible. And so you've got a situation where I think they should put themselves forward for these interviews. It shows integrity. It shows that they're courageous. The one thing we do not want from a future Prime Minister is a Prime Minister that scuttles off and runs away from any sign of trouble. I've got no time for that. Johnson's done it in the past. Obviously, Truss has done it now as well, and it doesn't bode well, considering they're going to face a lot more difficult challenges over the next few months and years than facing Andrew Neil. In particular, right now, the thing that most people want in this country, and that is addressing the challenge of the cost of living crisis.
And he did zone in on something that's getting really rather irritating, is that Rishi Sunak, who went to one of the most expensive public schools in the country, came from a world of privilege, make no mistake about it, keeps trying to sort of pretend that he came from some sort of struggling working class background. It's just not true.
Oh, loads of them do that. I mean, they want to be down with the people, but then people just check their records and realise that they're not. And it's also backed up by some of the slightly snobbish comments that they've come up with. What people really want, though, is not even so much about background, whether someone's gone to enlightened houses of Eton, or whether someone's grown up through a council house, state education, and end up going up to the ranks to get Prime Minister. That should be irrelevant. It should be about their ability to do the job. And at the moment, we don't seem to have the politicians who are up to what I think is the most serious task of any Prime Minister in a generation. We haven't even warmed up on the cost of living crisis yet. There's tokenism policies that aren't addressing the problem. The government is still asleep at the wheel. We're having a leadership contest that's going on for seemingly weeks, and our politicians are on 6-week recess in the middle of the cost of living crisis.
Oh, James, let's move on to what they're calling the Energy Bills Support Scheme. We know that in October, when the price cap changes, the average energy bill for a household will go up to about $3,300. They think £3,850 a year by Christmas. And in January, when the price cap will change again, even more. They're talking in the not too distant future of £500 a month for every household, or the average household in Britain, for energy bills. It's just astronomical. It doesn't bear thinking about. So full marks to the government for thinking in the right direction. So this energy bills support scheme is going to give £400 to every household in the country to help them pay their bills during this cost of living crisis. Now, I don't want to be too critical of this, but what I would suggest is, it seems strange that among the people who get this will be multi-millionaires, millionaires, even billionaires, and loads of people who are comfortably off, who frankly do not need it. I mean, I hate to say it, I'll take the 400 quid, but at the end of the day, I don't especially need it. So I'm wondering whether this is the right way to distribute the help. Should we not be focusing on the 10 million people who in October will be plunged below the poverty line because of these rises?
Completely. We're heading for a catastrophic set of events through what will be a new winter of discontent. I mean, we're looking, it's not just even about energy, it's also about fuel, it's also to do with food. The cost of living crisis is warming up, and it's going to be terrible this winter. I think the government, I can see what they're trying to do, but I think the logic, like everything else with this government, is misplaced. I agree. I don't think millionaires and billionaires should be getting this. What should be happening is they should be finding ways of means testing to give it to those who need it most. And actually, if you save the money which is being spent and giving it to people who perhaps don't need it, you could spend more towards the people.
You could give the poor more money, couldn't you? Yes.
Exactly. And I think there needs to be various campaigns that are starting up about this to try and segment about almost the haves and have-nots on this. £400 fine. It's still not enough. This is a problem that's not going to go away. There's other measures the government should be doing as well. I mean, reversing the decision on national insurance. Also, they need to be looking at the fuel duty and also VAT as well, because it's one of the highest amounts in terms of total tax take in terms of fuel in Europe. There's also aspects they should be thinking about for businesses, with support for small businesses and corporation tax. Small businesses have been hammered massively over the last few years, in particular lack of support over the COVID era. So there's all these things the government should be doing, which actually will have a better effect. It's not just about individuals, it's also about supporting the economy and our businesses as well. So while this is a step in the right direction, giving this money, yet again, it's not joined up. I would rather those who need it most get more, and those who need it least don't need it.
Indeed. Let's move on still with the economy, still with financial affairs. New figures reveal that in terms of returning to work after the COVID pandemic, Britain is the worst in Europe, that more workers in Britain are refusing to return to work than anywhere else in Europe. Now, I don't think this can be underestimated. The whole thing about WFH is a delusion. Companies where half the staff are working from home will not be as efficient unless as they would if they were in the office. And I think the new Prime Minister has got to get to grips with this. You know, when the civil service refused to go to work, why should private companies demand that their staff go to work? I think the new Prime Minister's got to get to grips with this.
Yeah, completely. I mean, yes, the technology is better today than it was before. More people can work from home. That's fine, but real productivity in a lot of jobs demands proper face-to-face interaction in terms of scope of a business, good communication, trade, and so on, and also tying in together logistics. There's a multitude of industries require that, and I think there has been a slip into mentality over the COVID year where we can just work from home. In terms of the hours spent at working at home, there's a lot of distractions that go on when you're working from home. I think that, again, the government needs to be looking at this and get back to the model that we have. I think some people, if it's employed, they can work from home, but there's certain corporations and businesses demand for productivity reasons that people get into the office more. And I think this mentality is, again, another aspect behind why we've got a sluggish economy.
Now, finally, let's talk about Liz Truss. Go back to the leadership debate. She is pledging, you'll be interested in this as a man from north of the border, James. She is pledging there will be no second Scottish independence referendum, and I quote her, on my watch. So that's not going to go down well with Miss Sturgeon and her gang, is it?
Well, I think, you can look at it two ways. It won't go down well publicly, but, privately it sort of provokes more kind of politics of grievance. I personally think there should be another referendum. I'm a big believer in freedoms and democracy and all those things that, like Liz Truss would always say, that's important to the bedrock of society. And I think let the people decide. They said once in a generation, but they also said it would happen again if circumstances change, like, for instance, the Brexit vote. We've got a ludicrous situation that the Tories haven't won a national election in Scotland for over 65 years. That's not particularly democratic. I think we're at a point whereby the public should decide again in Scotland. And if the government are confident that they'll win, then they'll campaign as such, but they'll let the people of Scotland decide. I think there should be another referendum, but I think something will happen from Sturgeon. It might be the kind of piecemeal Catalonia model where there will be a referendum, but it won't be rubber stamped. That's no good for democracy. It has to go through the right protocol, similar to what happened in 2014 with the same question.
What's your sense? I know that you got a home up there. You spent a lot of time in Scotland. What's your sense of the feeling in Scotland? Because Sturgeon paints a picture that if we had a referendum tomorrow, it would be a done deal. It would be a massive majority in favour of independence. But the more Scottish people I talk to, the more I feel that that's not the case. It's actually very, very close, and I believe the opinion polls are beginning to show that if there was a referendum tomorrow, Sturgeon might lose. The Scots might vote to stay in the United Kingdom.
Well, if that happens, at least democracy in action, I think it will be close. The last referendum, memory serves me, at the start of the campaign, the yes campaign was well down compared to the no campaign, and it tightened. Obviously no won, but the polls did narrow quite a bit, and actually the week before, the polls were showing it was actually nip and tuck. So we've got basically a situation here whereby the polls are quite close. I think the result will be quite close. There's another generation of young people who've come into it who are prone to vote for yes. But I do think there's a sense from being up in Scotland that people are wary about it, because obviously we're going through a lot. There's come through Brexit, there's obviously the COVID era, it's cost of living crisis, and then to have a referendum at this time, a lot of people are wary about that. But I am a believer in democracy, and I think the Scottish public should get to the ultimate decision. If they choose to vote yes or no, that is their democratic right, and I don't think the Tory government should be taking that away from them.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Let's put it to the vote and see what the Scottish people want. It is, after all, their country, and they should have a decision on the future of that country. It's just the way that Sturgeon seems to tell us, you are repressing us, you are holding us down. The independence that every Scots person wants is being deprived of them. It's not true, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a sort of mixed message in my own head about Nicola Sturgeon. I'm someone sympathetic to the independence debate. But true independence is politics and individual freedoms. And I would suggest that what the Scottish government have done, particularly Sturgeon over the COVID era, is that while they're claiming they would give freedoms for the people through independence, many of the measures that Sturgeon and the Scottish government have put in place in terms of the restrictions have been anything but free. They've actually, I think sometimes they've gone too far and been too draconian. So my vision of independence is that you've got to allow the people to be free to reap the benefits of political independence. And I'm not sure right now that is the model in Scotland.
Okay, James, absolutely. Great to talk to you. That was James Melville, political and social commentator.